Such a reason, Marcus Trescothick had to leave an Ashes tour back in 2006. It eventually ended his international career. Former England footballer Paul Gascoigne has struggled with alcohol and drug abuse, and in 2008 he was detained by police under the Mental Health Act. Baseball legend Darryl Strawberry suffered from severe depression and drug addiction. He also spent time in prison after being arrested for drug possession. And NHL star Theron Fleury was another who battled with depression and drug addiction throughout his career. He said he even contemplated suicide in 2004. Well, earlier I spoke to sports psychologist and performance consultant Roberto Forzoni. He said depression could affect anybody, even sportsmen like Jonathan Trott, a player who in the past has performed under the most intense pressure.
I think if history's shown us anything, is not to be surprised by the types of people that can suffer from this depression. If you look at Gary Speed, he was on a bit of a high with the Welsh national side and in his family life. But depression took his life away from him.
Do you think that Trott can come back from this?
Of course he can, yeah. I think if he has a break, if he gets treatment, he certainly can get back to where he was, yeah. I don't doubt that for 1 minute.
I mean, in your experience, are high-level sportsmen and women more susceptible to suffering from stress and depression?
I think if you look at the general population, the percentage of athletes and top performers that might suffer from depression would be lower than the average. But that's not to say that they won't suffer from it, because you've got to look at the fact they're under the microscope all the time. You know, they're in the press, on TV. The coverage now for most high-level sports and particularly things like football, cricket, tennis is substantial. So these guys are being assessed all the time, every time they go out to perform. So they're under the microscope. But having said that, they do have a high degree of mental toughness, and that's why they've got to the level that they perform at. But depression can hit anybody. There's no discrimination there.
I mean, depression is something that players can often hide from those closest to them, sometimes with tragic results. You mentioned Gary Speed. Is it getting easier for sportsmen and women to come forward if they do have a problem?
Absolutely. I've heard a lot of radio shows today, a lot of TV programs discussing this very subject. And 2-3 years ago, it wouldn't have been discussed as openly as it is. And you wouldn't have got a case where a high-profile player would leave something like the Ashes and say, look, I'm suffering with this illness, this mental illness, and I need to get some focus on it.
But
so that wouldn't have happened some years ago.
But is there still a stigma attached to having mental health issues?
There is a stigma, and I think the fact we're discussing it just highlights the fact there is a stigma still. Because if there wasn't, people wouldn't be discussing it as they are. So there's definitely still a stigma. Is it as much as it was? No, it's not.